Well, we have to care because very easy to understand. If you don't have the ethics approval, your research project is not going to be commencing. As simple as that. When we're sitting in Brussels at the ethics panels at the ERC or the H2020, basically we know that we are at the end of the road. So maybe the scientific aspect of the project are fantastically well described. It is a fantastic, it is a wonderful, it is a marvelous project. This is why it's being funded by ERC or H2020. This is perhaps, and I'm sure it is the case with Monbasa. But at the end of the road, the ethics issues are explored, the ethics issues are assessed. And if you have not been addressing these ethics issues, if you have not been taking into account all these ethics issues, the research is not going to be commencing because the money is not going to be flowing. But you need to ensure full compliance with the European Union norms and regulations regarding the due respect to humans, animals, plants and environment. And this is not a recommendation. So it is mandatory. It is not for you to decide whether you want or you don't want to pay due respect. You have to. This is what the society is asking you to do, because you are requesting money to a public area, to a public fund, and this area, which is governed by different institutions, including the European Parliament, has established the rules. You cannot get access to these funds unless you are in full compliance with the norms. Because basically what you need to do, you have to maximize benefits and minimize the risk and harms. But of course, minimizing the risk and harms, it doesn't mean deleting them. Because sometimes, in order to do some progress, and that's again the example with rats, in which you are interrupting the connection in the spinal cord because you want to reproduce the very same human conditions, you have to do some damage, which means you have to consider the needs that are associated with each research project. And this is the ethical aspect of your project. Going beyond what is good and what is bad, and valuing everything, and doing a careful risk-benefit analysis of all your actions. Why these ethics approvals are so important? Well, as I said before, it is not a recommendation. It's mandatory. So you have to. So you cannot. I mean, it is not that you would agree or you would disagree. So this is just driving a car and you have a red light, you know you have to stop. It's not for you to decide whether what can you do. So it's a norm. So you need to get this approval. But you need to be aware that there is a number of benefits that comes associated with getting this approval. And this is something you have to really use, you yourself as a researcher and you yourself as an institution. Because having an ethics approval, it's protecting you. It's protecting not only the people involved in the project, but also the research that is being conducted. You can stand in front of the society and say, I'm just fulfilling all the norms you told me to fulfill. I'm just agreeing. I'm adhering to all the accepted ethics standards that are expected to be adhered by the society. So you're demonstrating that you care about the society when you have this ethics approval. Because let's say you're going to be producing a press release because you're so happy of a given development, and your institution is going to be preparing a press release. So it might be very complicated, your development, but you have to transform this in plain words. You have to transform it in lay words so that everyone can understand what you've done. And besides understanding what is the level of advance that you've done in the technology, the institution and the society, they need to be aware and they need to know that what you've done it according to some ethics standards. If you've been using animals, it's because that's the only way to progress in the understanding of this given pathology. If you've been involving some picturing or some videos of some images of people, is because your research requires handling these videos, and because you're handling these videos, you have provided a number of measures to maintain the privacy and to maintain the confidentiality of the people involved in the research. So in every single aspect of your research, you have been taking care of this. Normally, when we go into the bioethics, we have a number of principles that I will be briefly summarizing here. This might require another full class, but we're here for an introduction of these ethics issues. And these 4 principles that are governing what we do in the bioethics, in a way, they can also be applied for all different types of ethics issues. And some of them, or you would say maybe all of them, this is common sense. Ethics is about common sense. Ethics is about things that you say, well, this is what I've been doing all the time. I've always been trying to do good. I never pretended to do anything that would be harmful. Well, you have to formulate this. You have to verbalize this. You have to be explicit about all these different concepts. It's not that we have to assume, we as a society, that what you're doing here in Tecnalia is expected to be good for the society. You need to tell the society that what you're doing here will have some benefits, eventually, directly or indirectly, into the society. What are these 4 principles? Well, the 4 basic principles in bioethics, you will see it's very easy to understand, and everybody will, even if you haven't heard before about ethics or bioethics, you will just have to agree with me that this is common sense. Principle of non-maleficence, principle of beneficence, respect for autonomy, and justice. So just try to go one by one. Non-maleficence, you should not harm any human being. We could extend, you should not harm any animal, you should not harm any plant, you should not harm any environment, because you have to be respectful for this. And if you have to do, you need to enter into a careful consideration, and you have to evaluate the equilibrium between the potential benefits that can be expected from your intervention and the risks associated. So this is going beyond moral, and this is directly ethics issues. So you value what are the benefits and what are the risks. So are we outweighing the benefits in front of the risk so we can progress and we can do the research? We have done the corresponding ethics risk assessment, and we have concluded that the benefits are outweighing the risk, so we can progress. Principle of beneficence. So you not only don't have to harm anyone, but you have an obligation, a moral obligation if you wish, a duty to do good, or to benefit the human beings, or to be doing some beneficial applications or beneficial return, a beneficial outcome for the society. However, we have to be very careful, because we might think that what we're doing is going to be good for the society. Well, there might be members in the society that might disagree with us, because what we think is good for them, not everybody will understand, or not everybody will simply agree, which means we cannot impose our subjective idea of what is good. This is always in relative terms. So we must take into account the freedom and the authorization of any human beings or any aspects of the environment that are involved. In the case of the human participants, it means we need to ask the informed consent. We need to have this permission in place in which we have previously explained to the participant what it's all about, that he or she will be participating. And we have to accept that even when we have provided all the different information, if this person, for whatever reason, and this reason, they don't need to explain the reasons. They simply might decide, you know, I'm not going to be participating in your study, and that's enough. They don't have to justify this decision, because they have the right, they have the freedom not to participate. We thought, well, we might think, well, you're wrong. because you don't know, if you are not participating, you will not be getting this benefit. Well, it doesn't matter. There is a upper right, which is the freedom, which is the right to disagree, the right not to be participating, which is in connection with the third principle, which is we have to respect the autonomy of the participants that are involved in any research, which means every human being has to decide whether it's going to be participating in any intervention, which include any biomedical intervention that might be affecting directly him or her, which again, it implies we have to obtain previously an informed consent. And the informed consent, sometimes it's obvious when you are taking blood from a person, but sometimes it's not that obvious. Maybe psychology studies. You go to school and you want to be asking some what you think are very simple questions to kids. Well, you need to be informing who is in charge of these kids, the parents, and the parents will have to be providing you with the permission. It's not as simple as just entering into a classroom and distributing a piece of paper and then asking the kids to respond. They need to be aware, and if they cannot be aware because they cannot assess the relevance of this survey, you need to be obtaining the corresponding consent from their tutors, from their parents. And the final principle, it is also very obvious. That's the principle of justice. You might be developing a technology which is going to be great for the Basque Country. That's great. But there's other people living outside the Basque Country, right? And you expect it to be providing a benefit for the mankind, for everyone that we're living on this planet. So it cannot be that your solution for whatever problem this society might have, and it can be a technological problem, it can be a resource problem, it can be an energy problem, it can be a biomedical problem. It cannot be that you're providing a solution only for one group of the society. You have the moral obligation, you need to be providing this to all human beings without restrictions or discriminations of any sort.